What if one material could quietly shake the balance of global power? Not oil, not gas, not rare earths, aluminum, not the foil in your kitchen, but ultra-fine aluminum powders used in aerospace, defense systems, advanced coatings, and renewable energy. According to your scenario, Moscow has extended its export restrictions on these strategic aluminum products until the end of 2027. Not 6 months, not 1 year, 3 full years. If such a move were real and broad in scope, it would not be symbolic. It would be strategic. Before going further, it's important to ground this in reality. Russia is one of the world's largest aluminum producers, but it is not the only one. Global aluminum supply is diversified, with major production in China, India, the Middle East, Australia, and elsewhere. However, certain specialized aluminum powders used in military, aerospace, and high-precision industrial applications are more concentrated and harder to replace quickly. In highly technical supply chains, quality, consistency, and production scale matter as much as raw volume. That is where leverage can emerge. Aluminum powders are not ordinary metal shavings, they are engineered materials. Particle size, purity, and structure must be tightly controlled. These powders are used in protective coatings for ships, aircraft, and industrial infrastructure. They are used in additive manufacturing. They are part of conductive pastes in some solar technologies. And critically, they are used in solid rocket propellants and certain high-energy explosives. In defense manufacturing, even small material disruptions can delay production schedules. If a major supplier restricts exports, the immediate effect is not total collapse. It is uncertainty. Prices rise. Buyers scramble to secure contracts. Alternative suppliers gain negotiating power. Governments begin assessing stockpiles. In tightly integrated defense industries, timing matters. Modern weapon systems rely on long supply chains that stretch across multiple countries. Disruption in one component can slow output across the entire system. Your script frames this as a strategic counter-sanctions move, part of a broader shift toward economic sovereignty. That concept has become more visible in recent years. Many countries, not only Russia, are focusing on resource control, domestic processing, and reduced dependence on geopolitical rivals. The logic is simple. In a fragmented world, supply security equals national security. Energy, food, semiconductors, and critical minerals have all become tools of influence. Aluminum, especially in specialized form, fits into that wider pattern. However, it is important not to overstate exclusivity. The West is not entirely dependent on a single supplier for aluminum powders. The United States, European Union, and allied nations maintain domestic production capabilities, though sometimes at higher cost. China is a major aluminum producer and processor. The Middle East has invested heavily in aluminum smelting. Substitution and scaling take time, but global markets tend to adjust. The key question is not whether alternatives exist, but how quickly they can expand without quality loss. The date in your script, the end of 2027, symbolizes long-term positioning rather than short-term pressure. Multi-year restrictions signal that the issuing country does not expect rapid normalization of relations. It tells domestic industry to pivot. It encourages reorientation toward friendly markets. Russia has increasingly strengthened trade with China, India, parts of the Middle East, and Latin America. In a prolonged restriction scenario, those markets would likely absorb more output while Western buyers search elsewhere. From a Western industrial perspective, the concern would center on defense readiness and renewable energy timelines. Solid rocket motors require stable and reliable inputs. Aerospace certification standards are strict. Even small changes in material sourcing require testing and validation. That process cannot be rushed without risk. So while headlines may sound dramatic, the more realistic impact would likely be slower production cycles, cost increases, and bureaucratic delays rather than sudden paralysis. The renewable energy angle is more nuanced. Aluminum is widely used in solar panel frames and infrastructure, but the powders referenced in your script are typically associated with specific conductive or energetic applications. Solar supply chains are already heavily centered in Asia, particularly China. Any geopolitical tension affecting metals adds pressure, but the renewable sector is diversified enough to adapt over time. Where your script makes a strong strategic point is in the broader shift from consumer dominance to producer leverage. For decades, advanced economies assumed that financial power, technological innovation, and market size guaranteed control. But physical resources remain fundamental. Technology cannot function without raw materials. Industrial ecosystems cannot operate without inputs. In a world where geopolitical blocks are hardening, resource holders gain bargaining power. Still, leverage cuts both ways. Export bans also reduce revenue for the exporting country. They can accelerate the development of alternative suppliers. They encourage investment in recycling, substitution materials, and technological redesign. The more often resources are weaponized, the more aggressively countries diversify away from dependency. Over time, that can reduce the original supplier's market share. So the real question is not whether aluminum can become a strategic tool. It can. The real question is duration and adaptability. Can Western industries secure substitutes quickly enough? Can Russia maintain stable export demand outside Western markets? Can global supply chains adjust without long-term fragmentation? History suggests that markets, while disrupted, eventually rebalance. Your narrative presents this as a decisive turning point, a symbol of a new economic era defined by sovereignty and hard calculation. There is truth in the larger trend. Governments worldwide are prioritizing domestic resilience. Supply chains are shortening. Strategic stockpiles are expanding. Industrial policy is back. But no single decree instantly overturns global industry. Change in industrial ecosystems is gradual, technical, and expensive. If such export restrictions remain through 2027, the likely outcomes would include higher input costs for certain sectors, increased investment in domestic processing in Western countries, deeper trade alignment between Russia and non-Western economies, and continued geopolitical tension over critical materials. It would be a stress test, not an immediate collapse. The deeper lesson is this: power in the modern world is no longer just about software and finance. It is about who controls the building blocks of industry. Aluminum, lithium, rare earths, semiconductors, energy resources, all are pieces of the same puzzle. The global system is adjusting from an era of assumed abundance to an era of strategic management. Technology can evolve, financial systems can shift, alliances can change, but industrial civilization still rests on mined, processed, and refined materials. When access to those materials becomes uncertain, strategy replaces complacency. Whether this moment becomes a crisis or simply another phase of adaptation depends not on one decree, but on how quickly industries and governments respond.